The Mercedes-AMG GT Roadster is a deeply desirable convertible performance sports car that builds purposefully on the heritage of its SLS predecessor. It's uncompromising, intoxicating, and very, very fast.
If you've always dreamed of an exotic V8 powered performance sports car, it's likely you've also dreamed of it in convertible form. So Mercedes offers this, the Mercedes-AMG GT Roadster. Oh, you'd like one, wouldn't you? The GT model was originally launched in coupe form back in 2015 as part of a lineup that was finally completed a couple of years later when this Roadster variant made its debut as part of the changes to the range that also included the introduction of high-performance GTC derivatives. Now, as you might expect, this open-topped design builds upon quite a bloodline of landmark Mercedes sports cars, one that goes all the way back to the achingly beautiful 300 SL Gullwing that first made its appearance back in 1954 at the New York International Motor Sports Show. It quickly became the first choice for the famous, everyone from Grace Kelly to Sophia Loren, and the version that most people wanted was the Roadster model that arrived in '57, one of the most desirable convertibles ever made. The Stuttgart maker referenced that car extensively in creating two of its modern-era performance sports convertibles, the SLR Roadster of 2007 and the SLS AMG Roadster of 2013. And they did so again in creation of this Mercedes-AMG GT Roadster. Now, the brand insists that this cabrio variant is no afterthought in the GT lineup, pointing out that its design was conceived at exactly the same time as that of the Coupe GT model. As with that fixed top derivative, it's fashioned around aluminium space frame underpinnings and it's powered by a potent 4-litre twin-turbo V8 engine, and it uses the same AMG SpeedShift DCT 7-speed paddle shift transmission. And it's also hand-built on the same bespoke Zindelfinger production line. This then is the car that Mercedes offers to take on standard-setting benchmark segment rivals like the Porsche 911 Turbo Cabriolet and the Audi R8 Spider. Is it good enough though to remain genuinely desirable in that kind of company? Let's find out. So what is it like? Well, press the large starter button on the AMG drive unit console. And that V8 that sits beneath that vast bonnet up front bellows into life with slightly disconcerting aggression. From the outset then, you know that there are going to be no half measures. I mean, sporting subtlety has never been an AMG hallmark, and it's been completely dispensed with here. Just listen to that engine, as you can do so much more easily in this Roadster model with the roof down. It's a retraction process that takes just 11 seconds and which is possible at speeds of up to 31 miles an hour. Now that is not the highly strung exhaust note of an Italian diva car. What you're hearing under that dragster of a bonnet is one of the most characterful V8 power plants in the world. A 4-litre twin turbo unit supplied in this entry-level GT model in 476 bhp state of fume with 600 Newton meters of torque. Now that is enough to take you to 62 miles an hour in 4 seconds flat as part of unyielding acceleration that wouldn't stop until you reached 189 mph if you kept your right foot buried in the carpet. Two other variants are on offer if you want the 4-litre V8 to put out a bit more, a 510 bhp GTS model and a flagship 557 bhp GTC variant, which improves those figures to 3.7 seconds and 196 miles an hour. This, though, isn't a car that's defined by its numbers or its facts. Instead, the GT Roadster experience is all about sensation. It's all about how it makes you feel. Imagine rolling along the Promenade des Anglais in Cannes on the most super saturated summer's day, making the beautiful people just look that little bit less luminous. That's what this Mercedes can do. It's got the X factor. I mean, call it charisma, call it authenticity, whatever you like. but the result is a creation of something that's more than just a very fast sports car. The result is an experience to remember. Of course, in driving such a car, you don't always want an experience to remember. After all, a high-performance sports car is often at its very worst when you're just off collecting your dry cleaning. And here, well, it is true that a GT Roadster is built for brutal acceleration, sideways tyre squealing, and midnight three-figure runs on autobahns, but it has also been created to flatter you when you're just parading along. It's so civilized in normal use, it's really easy to forget just how comically over-endowed it is in the acceleration department. There's a silky smooth twin clutch gearbox, it's got sensible ground clearance for speed humps, and the ride can be surprisingly subtle. That's providing on this base GT model you're wise enough to pay the extra for the optional AMG ride control 3-stage adaptive damping sports suspension setup. Now that system, which is standardized further up the range, gives you the option of switching into a comfort-orientated controlled efficiency setting, and that'll take the edge off the rather firm ride that you probably won't want to be stuck with in ordinary commuting. Thanks to all of this, once you get used to the vast width of this car and the restricted view out that you get, courtesy of poor rearward vision and that elongated bonnet, you can just occasionally become lulled into a sense of mundanity at the wheel of this GT and find yourself back in the ordinary world. But then the road opens up, you plant the throttle pedal, the engine roars, and you suddenly find yourself having to think and act really quickly. And as your heart begins to pump, you start to realise that this car might be just a little bit better at the whole going fast business than you are. It certainly doesn't require you to do anything as crude as changing gear with a manual stick. Now, apart from Porsche, it's hard to find a brand in this segment that offers the option of manual transmission, so even hardcore enthusiasts are unlikely to be disappointed to find that you can't have that here. The frantic potential of this GT is instead harnessed by much the same AMG SpeedShift DCT 7-speed auto box that was used in this model's SLS predecessor, and which also featured in Ferrari's 458 Italia. And the SpeedShift setup delivers the usual seamless shifting that characterises all dual clutch boxes of this type, or there's the option of pressing this button that takes you into full manual mode and transfers control to these perfectly sighted steering wheel paddle shifters. Transmission toys, well, they include a race start launch control feature and software that blips the throttle on downshifts to the evocative accompaniment of popping and banging from the switchable AMG performance exhaust system. Now, the exhaust note is one of the parameters influenced by the various settings of the AMG Dynamic Select driving mode system. This is one of those setups that can alter the throttle response, the steering feel, gear shift timings, and the stability control thresholds to suit the way that you want to drive. Now, we mentioned this system's C controlled efficiency mode earlier on when we were discussing the suspension. If you twist this AMG drive unit console controller, you'll also find yourself able to choose between 3 further options. There's S for Sport, S Plus for Sport Plus, and I for the individual option, and that will allow you to set up the specific dynamic elements to your taste, much as a race driver would tune his race car. Avoid this entry-level GT model, and on variants further up the lineup, you also get an extra and more focused, circuit-orientated race setting. An active rear spoiler extends at various speeds based on the selected drive mode. All well and good, but in times past, high-performance Mercedes-AMG sports cars tended to become unstuck when you threw them at a set of corners. This one, though, is rather different. No, it can't be ordered with the 4-wheel drive system that you get as standard on top rival Porsche 911, Jaguar F-Type and Audi R8 models, but the Affalterbach engineers have put an awful lot of effort into systems that will allow this car to corner with commendably agile directness. The stability of all variants is aided by a rear axle differential lock, a mechanical setup on this GT that becomes electrically activated on models further up the range. On a track, you can really feel the system playing with the power to maximize traction, and it's a really important aid to have, given the ease with which unbridled ambition might easily lead to a situation in which you could, well, seriously frighten yourself in this car. I mean, especially if the conditions are damp. If you're a track day fiend and you've avoided this base GT model, you'll be offered an optional AMG Dynamic Plus package that will give you dynamic engine and transmission mounts, and those are able to adjust their stiffness instantly and continuously to suit the cornering and throttle usage. Mercedes-AMG has saved its most sophisticated technology though for the flagship GTC derivative, which gets a clever active rear axle steering system that was originally developed for the exclusive track-focused GTR Coupe model. Now, this setup claims to offer the ideal combination of dynamic agility at speeds of over 62 miles an hour. It turns the rear wheels in the same direction as the front ones for greater high-speed stability and faster direction changes. At under 62, the rear wheels steer slightly in the opposite direction to those at the front, improving turning at lower speeds through the corners that, as a result, will require less steering input. You also get a tighter turning circle too. What else might you need to know? Well, steering feel always used to be an Achilles heel in high-performance Mercedes-AMG models, and it's true that the hydraulic helm offered here still doesn't communicate in the way that the electric steering setup in our rival Porsche 911 does. Fortunately though, enough feedback's provided here to allow you to feel fully in control. And that's something that you'll certainly feel thankful for when you're testing out this car's prodigious limits of traction and grip at speed through tighter bends. Now, through those turns, body roll, that's negligible, understeer's virtually non-existent, well, unless you've barreled into the corner far too quickly. The near perfect so-called front mid-engine weight balance helps enormously here too. But what about the drawbacks in structural integrity that you might inevitably expect would come with the adoption of a soft top? Well, they're difficult to detect. Scuttle shake, that flexing of the body over bumps that you would notice in an older rival like, say, Maserati Grand Cabrio or an open-topped Aston Martin V8 Vantage. That's been almost completely eradicated thanks to the comprehensive program of body shell stiffening that was adopted for this Roadster model. Now, that has added some extra weight, of course, around about 55 kilos of it, but that's not enough to diminish the driving dynamics to a really noticeable degree. I mean, a purist would note that this convertible GT can't quite match the coupe version for outright cornering prowess and overall ride control, but for everyone else, what's on offer here will be more than satisfactory. More of an issue for us is the road noise that's delivered over coarser surfaces. Now, you also get this with the coupe model, of course, but top down in this Roadster version, it's inevitably much more intrusive. On smoother tarmac, though, when you're traveling roof up, this Mercedes can be impressively refined. Wind noise is really noticeable by its absence. Now, you don't even get that much wind buffeting when the roof's down either, even at quite high speeds, thanks in part to this neat little glass wind deflector panel that sits between the seats. It all means that, well, in theory at least, you'd be quite comfortable in attempting a long intercontinental journey in this car. Well, that's providing, of course, that there's a racetrack at the end of it. Any high-performance sports car has to be an eye-catching thing. The old SLS Roadster certainly was, and like that car, this open-top GT model makes quite an impression at first glance. It's shorter and narrower than that previous Mercedes-AMG design, with aesthetic aggression that's ramped up several more degrees. I mean, get one of these in your mirrors and you're going to move over, and quickly. Is it beautiful in the way that, say, a Porsche 911 Cabriolet can be? Possibly not. Is it dramatic, confident, and in every way a classic-looking GT sports car? Absolutely. Now, as part of the changes that were made to the GT range when this Roadster variant was introduced, Mercedes has given all models this striking AMG Pan America front grille with its 15 chrome-plated vertical bars that echo the look of the Mercedes-AMG GT3 Racer. LED high-performance headlamps flow from the top corners of that opening, and they flank the outer edges of this quite enormous power-domed vented bonnet that pushes the cabin right back rearwards in the manner that characterised classic 50s Mercs like the legendary 300 SL Gullwing. If you lift it, then you'll find that the 4-litre bi-turbo V8 is situated way behind the front axle line to create what Mercedes likes to call this car's front mid-engine balance. As with all AMG models, this engine bears witness to this tuning division's unique one-man, one-engine approach, and the power plant is embellished with a plaque featuring the signature of the engineer who worked on it. My compliments, Herr Kurtz. Now, we should talk about the fabric convertible roof. It's quite a piece of work, available not only in black but also in red or beige. This triple layer top operates via a button just above the windscreen. It takes only 11 seconds to activate, and it can be raised or lowered at speeds of up to 31 miles an hour. The hood's supported by a lightweight structure using magnesium, steel and aluminium, which helps to keep the centre of gravity low. It folds cleanly into a compact Z shape into the area behind the seats. The central roof section neatly doubles up as a tonneau cover for the roof compartment. The mechanism has been tested against almost every climatic extreme on the planet, and it might just be the most advanced soft top ever built. Chopping the top off this GT model necessitated a fair bit of extra body shell strengthening. In comparison to the Coupe variant, the side skirts on this Roadster have a greater wall thickness and more chambers to make the structure more rigid. The dashboard support is braced against the windscreen surround by additional struts, while a strut tower brace between the soft top and the fuel tank reinforces the rear axle. More obvious examples of the Affalterbach development team's thoughtful engineering lie with detail touches like these large front air intakes that optimise the flow of air to that throbbing race-bred V8 engine. More cooling's delivered by a clever active air control system that's positioned just under the radiator grille, and by this further lower opening that's framed by a front splitter finished either in body colour, high gloss black, or as in this case, satin chrome. And that depends on the model and spec you've chosen. In profile, these twin-finned side air outlets offer another aesthetic highlight, and they represent a classic Mercedes sporting cue with an upper crease that flows purposefully into the front door panel. A more aggressive lower character line flows upwards between huge wheels that are slightly differently configured front and rear. You get 19-inch rims on this standard GT model, or as here, you can opt for a package that will add in 20-inch wheels at the back. Now that comes as part of the deal with the top GTC variant. Now, the bigger track of that top version standard active rear steer axle necessitates the need for a bit of widening here at the back. This standard GT model doesn't have that feature, which is why it is 57mm narrower than its pricey stablemate. Either way, at the rear, the styling's a bit less overt than it is elsewhere. It's all smooth surfaces, broad shoulders and narrow tail lamp graphics with jewel-like illumination courtesy of 18 individual LEDs. Now, what you can't see at standstill is the extendable rear aerofoil, which adds to the downforce that's created by that potent-looking lower diffuser with its integrated tailpipes. Take a seat behind the wheel, and the SLS underpinnings are betrayed by the way that the designers have had to retain that car's huge, oversized central transmission tunnel, which comes in the choice of high gloss or carbon fibre finishes. Now, in a nod to the V8 engine up front, this centre section features 8 AMG drive unit control buttons laid out in a V formation. And the most important one of these, of course, is the red illuminated start-stop button that's been thoughtfully relocated so as to be close at hand for owners of right-hand drive models. All of this would be fine if, The 4 buttons nearest to you weren't in precisely the kind of position that you'd otherwise want for resting your left arm, and B, a different set of priorities have been chosen for the primary cabin features that sit between the buttons here in the middle of the drive unit console. That second issue is the more significant one. The twin cup holders that you'll rarely need get prime forward positioning, but in contrast, the auto gear selector you'll use frequently has been pushed so far back behind your elbow that you have to reach awkwardly rearwards to operate it. Now, in between this futuristic looking twin plane protuberance is there to manage all your infotainment needs with a rotary dial that swivels and slides and pushes below a higher surface touchpad that permits letters, numbers and special characters to be handwritten. Although in this right hand model, of course, there's the awkwardness of having to do that with your left hand. Otherwise, there really isn't much to complain about in this exquisitely finished cabin, unless you were expecting the kind of useful occasional rear child-orientated seats that you get in a rival Porsche 911 Cabriolet, in which case you're going to be disappointed. In fact, even with only 2 of you inside, it's easy to feel fairly shrink-wrapped in here. Potential buyers previously used to an SLS will really notice this model's 50mm reduction in wheelbase length. Now, that's not to say that it's in any way uncomfortable. On the contrary, the Napa leather trimmed AMG sport seats position you perfectly in front of this flat-bottomed AMG performance steering wheel, and they're particularly supportive if you choose them in this optional AMG performance form. Either way, they incorporate these air scarf vents that will pleasantly warm your neck if you're tempted to go al fresco on a cool morning, at which point you'll also appreciate the way that this slim glass panel between the headrests here reduces top-down buffeting. So, gear lever situation apart, there's very little wrong with the ergonomics and interior design, and any elements that you might otherwise be tempted to take issue with are quickly forgotten as you begin to admire the sheer style of it all. I mean, it is deliciously unnecessary to have as many as 4 jet engine style chrome vents here at the top of the centre stack, but it just looks great and it adds to the whole aviation style theme. Just above these sits an 8.4-inch command online infotainment screen, and that's far more cleanly integrated into the dash than it is on most other Mercedes models, and it features the usual sophisticated graphics that make those of every other rival system look dull and cheap. Now, particularly nice are the vehicle sections, and that allows you to tailor your preferred driving modes via the AMG Dynamic Select system. There's all the normal infotainment stuff too, of course, with 3D mapping, live traffic information, use of Mercedes-Benz apps, and in-car internet access for things like Facebook and web radio. In addition, the package provides linguatronic voice control, 10GB music register, plus access to news and weather reports. Anything the infotainment display can't tell you will be covered off by the smaller colour screen that nestles between these 2 deeply cowled dials offered by the instrument binnacle. Via the wheel-mounted buttons, this gives you the usual trip, navigation, radio, media, telephone, assistance and service options that any ordinary Mercedes would offer, plus it adds an additional AMG segment. Now here you can monitor turbo boost and temperatures, you can check on your Dynamic Select system driving settings, or activate the lap timer that you're going to need when you're cremating those Michelin Pilot Supersports tyres on a track day. In true supercar style, cabin stowage space is mainly notable by its absence. You can't really cram jackets and soft items in behind the seat backs in the way that you can in an SL. In addition, the tiny door pockets are merely small areas framed by stretched sections of leather trim. The glove box is pokey, there's nowhere to store your sunglasses. Still, you do get these dual cup holders I mentioned earlier, and there is a small netted compartment on the side of the passenger footwell, and this storage box between the seats has SD card and twin USB ports, and rather curiously features an ignition key slot. Let's finish in here by making the perhaps inevitable observation that rearward vision with the top up is woeful. To be honest, actually, it isn't even very good when the roof's down like this, and your view out front is impeded by that huge long bonnet. All of this does make it particularly disappointing that on this base GT model, Mercedes insists that you should pay extra for the, well, near essential Parktronic parking sensors and a rear view camera. Let's take a look in the back. The boot lid is particularly light thanks to its fabrication from a clever combination of plastic and carbon fibre. Now if, like most buyers, you specify the optional premium pack, you'll be able to open this with a wave of your foot beneath the bumper. Impressively, the 350 litre capacity on offer is exactly the same as you'll get with the Coupe body style, and it's not affected by the position of the roof. Not all high-performance sports cars are that practical. The boot and arrival Audi R8 Spider, for example, is just 112 litres in size. So in that car, you couldn't fit in a couple of golf bags in the way that you can with this one. Now there's a high lip over which you have to lift heavy items, which is forgivable, and no option of a luggage net to keep smaller boot items from rolling around, which really isn't. Small, thin objects could be placed in this slim pouch which clips into the back of the luggage area. In a world of spiralling costs, it's rather pleasing to find that Mercedes supercars are getting progressively more affordable over the decades. This car's predecessor, the SLS-AMG Roadster, was on sale throughout its lifetime for around £170,000, about £60,000 more than the asking price of the standard GT Roadster model we're testing here, just over £110,000. If you want to be pedantic, you can write to us and point out that the old SLS-AMG had 100 bhp more than this car offers, in which case we will write back and tell you that while that's certainly true, the SLS wasn't really any quicker and certainly wasn't any better to drive. In fact, this GT's much lighter weight almost certainly makes it a bit faster in the real world. Now, we're not going to go any further into that, but we are going to look in detail at the price and specification side of the Mercedes-AMG GT Roadster model lineup. So think in terms of a premium of just under £12,000 to trade up to this Roadster version from an identically engined coupe model. All variants use basically the same 4-litre bi-turbo V8, but they offer it in varying states of tune. 476 bhp in this base GT guise, 510 bhp in the GTS model, and 557 bhp in the top GTC variant, for which you will need a £140,000 budget. So, having covered what you'll need to spend to become an AMG GT Roadster owner, we also need to touch on what else there is out there to tempt you in this sector. Now, before we look at what the other manufacturers are offering in this segment, we should point out that the Mercedes-AMG brand itself offers what might be seen as a direct alternative to this car in the form of its SL63 model. Now, with that car, you get 585 bhp, so much more power than the AMG GT models can offer. But all that does is compensate for the 175 kilo weight penalty that the SL carries around thanks to its metal folding roof. Ultimately, even in AMG trim, the SL isn't an out-and-out driver's machine though, and it isn't a really direct Porsche 911 Cabriolet competitor in the way that this GT can be. So, having mentioned this Mercedes model's arch rival, let's put it up against an AMG GT Roadster in value terms. The base 476 bhp version of this car would probably be seen as a rival for a 911 Carrera S Cabriolet, which would cost around £11,500 less in equivalent PDK Auto guise. The comparison can't be a really direct one though, because the Porsche fronts up with 56 bhp and 100 Nm less power, which is why it's half a second slower to 62 miles an hour. Now, obviously, there are other alternatives that a potential GT Roadster buyer might want to look at. Find around £4,000 more, and you could get yourself a Jaguar F-Type SVR convertible with 4-wheel drive and 100 bhp more, but it doesn't have the street-side presence of this Mercedes, and it won't go significantly faster. For about £5,000 less than this GT, you could have a Maserati Grand Cabrio Sport or an Aston Martin V8 Vantage S Roadster with comparable power, but less performance, thirstier running costs, and handling that'll be nothing like as sharp, so not tempting. If you're fortunate enough to have the kind of 140 to 150,000 pound budget that will enable you to focus on the more potent top GTC version of this Mercedes, you'll probably also be looking at comparably priced rivals like Porsche's 911 Turbo Cabriolet, Audi's R8 Plus Spider and the McLaren 570S Spider. Now all three have their followers, but they're all very different in character from this uncompromising Affalterbach model. If you are prepared to accept something a little more old school, the same kind of budget will get you an Aston Martin V12 Vantage Roadster or a Bentley Continental GT V8 convertible. Now, after that very pleasant bout of decision making, we would completely understand if you decided that this Mercedes-AMG model was indeed an appropriate reward for a lifetime of hard-working endeavour. Now, you'll probably have noticed from the comments I made earlier that the premium to own the flagship GTC derivative is pretty high. And that's not only because of the top version's extra power, but also because it comes equipped with the AMG rear axle steering system that the engineers behind this car are so proud of. Now, if you can't stretch to GTC motoring, then a good compromise is the mid-range GTS variant, which, like the GTC, gets three dynamic features that you can't have on this base GT model, and namely a faster acting electronic version of the AMG rear axle differential lock, a more powerful AMG braking system, and an extra race setting in the AMG Dynamic Select driving mode setup that delivers responses that are more suitable for track driving. But do you really need all of that stuff? Well, we'd suggest that most owners probably won't, in which case this standard GT model delivers pretty much everything you'll need. Now, the one thing that we suggest you should add to it is the optional AMG Ride Control Adaptive Damping Sport Suspension System, and that is only standardised further up the range. Now, this will allow you to dial down the stiffness of the ride when you're just simply not in the mood for this car's race-bred demeanour, and that will make quite a lot of difference in day-to-day motoring. Enough though with the dynamic stuff. What comes included with this standard model spec? Well, quite a lot, as you'd have a right to expect for the price being asked. You get 19-inch AMG alloy wheels all round with silver brake calipers, LED high-performance headlamps and heated AMG sport seats trimmed with Napa leather and featuring electric adjustment and memory settings. Plus, there's an air scarf system that gives you an integrated seat vent that's able to warm your neck with hot air on cool mornings. Plus, there is thermotronic climate control. There is an electrically extending rear aerofoil, an anti-theft protection package, a little wind deflector and an AMG performance exhaust that can be made louder by opening flaps inside the system at the touch of a button here on the centre console. You also get an 8.4-inch centre dash screen via which you operate the standard command online system. Now that includes a DAB radio, a CD and DVD player, satellite navigation with 3D mapping and live traffic information. The system will also access various Mercedes apps. It has connections for USB sticks and SD cards, and it includes integrated Wi-Fi with links to Facebook, Google Maps and weather updates. Other features include Linguatronic voice control and a 10 GB music register. At the other end of the lineup, the top GTC model comes with extra niceties like a 10-speaker, 640-watt Burmester sound system, Parktronic parking sensors, a reversing camera, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror, illuminated AMG door sill panels, and keyless go, keyless entry that also allows you to open the boot lid with a wave of your foot. All those niceties, though, can be added into this more affordable GT variant simply by ticking the box for the optional premium package, and that will add about £4,000 to this car's asking price. Whatever model you end up choosing, it'll come with a complimentary AMG Driving Academy training session at the Mercedes-Benz World Centre at Brooklands. Now, it's also worth mentioning that this car comes with a standard Mercedes Me Connect remote online services package that works via a free app. Now, this reminds you when a service is due, and it can automatically detect and share with you details on the car's wear and tear items. In addition, the app gives you a one-touch button for fast breakdown recovery and an alarm feature that will tell you when your parking meter is about to expire. Plus, you'll be able to lock or unlock the car from wherever you are and locate your vehicle's position if you've forgotten where you parked it. Now, if you are brave enough to lend your GT Roadster out to someone else, a geo-fencing feature will alert you if it leaves a preset geographical boundary. And if the car's ever stolen, a vehicle tracker will show its location anywhere in the world. So, on to extra cost features. Now, we've already mentioned the premium package. That's a pretty key option. Also important to note is the fact that you won't have to pay more to switch from this black fabric hood to one finished in either red or beige, although you might like to pay extra to have the interior inner lining finished in either beige or black coloured Dynamica microfiber. That is just one of the things that you can sort out on the Mercedes-Benz online configurator, and that's there to guide you through the huge range of available aesthetic options. Take the wheels. On this GT model, you can upgrade to rims at a larger 20-inch size at the back. In this case, they feature the AMG matte black finish, but you might prefer to opt for silver or titanium grey. As for the panel work, well, there's also a wide choice of different and very exclusive paint colours. We've got the extra cost Designo Diamond White here. The palette also includes a very exclusive AMG Solar Beam yellow finish that'll add £7,500 to the price of the car. On to optional styling packs. Now, there's an AMG Night package that uses a piano black finish for the front apron, the bonnet grills, the door mirror caps, the exhaust tips and the rear diffuser. Alternatively, there's the AMG Chrome version of that pack, and that'll cover all those items in a highly polished finish. Or you could go for the AMG Carbon Fibre option that covers those items with a distinctive composite weave pattern. If you want a wilder, racier look, the AMG Aerodynamics pack brings a larger front splitter and a fixed rear wing, along with black painted side skirts and front winglets. We might also be tempted by the AMG Carbon Fibre engine cover too. Inside, there's just as much scope to spend more money in search of an ever more exclusive feel. We'd want to look at adding full Dynamica microfiber trimming onto the seats, and particularly on the AMG Performance steering wheel. You can also add a high gloss black trim package that lifts the cabin a bit, but if funds permit, well, you'll ideally want to consider one of the optional AMG carbon fiber trim packages that for around about the price of your mother's Fiesta will finish various areas around the fascia and the doors with carbon fibre, featuring either high gloss, matte black or matte silver finishing. Further optional embellishments run to the special AMG Performance seats that we've been trying here, which offer extra lateral support. They include the standard air scarf integrated vents, and they can be optionally ordered in the air-cooled comfort ventilated form that you'll be very glad of on hot days. Now, if you want, you can pay extra to upholster these chairs with more exclusive Napa leather and red-stitched Dynamica microfiber. If you are happy with the standard sports seats, you can choose from different leather shades. You can get them decked out with contrast stitching, or you can have them delivered in a style quilted finish. Now, with all the seat styles, if you don't like these standard black seat belts, you can specify red or silver ones instead. So what else? Well, if you can stretch beyond this entry-level GT model and you're likely to be considering using this Mercedes for occasional circuit use, you'll be offered an optional AMG Dynamic Plus pack. Now, this provides a dynamic engine and transmission mounts, firmer, specially tuned suspension, a steering wheel that's fully trimmed with Dynamica microfiber, and yellow highlights on the instrument cluster. Tick the box for this package, and you can also specify special sports tyres that'll give you more grip on those track days. And on such events, you'll enjoy fade-free stopping power if you pay the enormous premium that Mercedes asks for the larger diameter AMG ceramic composite brakes. And that brings us neatly on to the last thing we need to do in this section, take a look at the safety spec. Now, like every sophisticated sports convertible, this one has a rollover protection system, and this one's supported by a special cross member behind the seats. And like the Coupe GT model, this Roadster comes with a 3-stage ESP stability program, acceleration skid control, and adaptive brake lights that flash under heavy stopping. And those emergency stops are further aided by adaptive brake assist and those sensors that predict the situation in advance. Now, there's also a system that primes and drives the brakes in the wet for instant response, plus hill start assist will stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. Driver and passenger front, side and knee airbags are fitted, along with automatic child seat recognition. A tyre pressure monitoring system is standard, and so is attention assist, and that will recognise if the driver is showing signs of getting tired. Collision prevention assist plus, now that will warn of hazards ahead, and it will also perform an emergency stop if there's no reaction from the driver. In addition, that standard remote online Mercedes Me Connect system that I mentioned earlier includes an e-call emergency call setup. Now that will immediately alert the rescue services with your exact GPS location if the airbags go off. Now, via a button just above the windscreen, you can also use e-call for accident recovery, breakdown and maintenance management. More safety kit can be added with the optional lane tracking package. Now, this includes 2 features. Blind spot assist will stop you from dangerously pulling out to overtake when there's a vehicle in your blind spot, and lane keeping assist will send vibrating pulses through the steering wheel if you wander out of your lane at cruising speeds. Now, if you want to go further, you can ask about the driving assistance package, which, as well as those 2 features I just mentioned, also includes 2 extra things. Distronic Plus, that will warn you if you're getting too close to the car in front, and the pre-safe system senses when an accident's inevitable, and if so, it instantly closes the windows and moves the seats to an optimum position of crash protection. You'd expect this Mercedes-AMG GT Roadster to be more efficient than its SLS-AMG predecessor. It's about 100 kilos lighter, with an engine 2.2 litres smaller and a power output that's up to 95 bhp down on its Gullwing predecessor. Nevertheless, you might still be surprised by just how much the engineers from Affalterbach have achieved here, given that they were tasked with creating a high-performance convertible sports car that would be just as quick as the one it replaced. Some stats will help illustrate the point here. The kind of returns the old SLS delivered, thirsty 21.4 mpg on the combined cycle and a sooty 308 grams per kilometre of CO2, remain better than those you get from a Maserati Grand Cabrio of today. And those kind of figures remain close to the sort of readings you'd also still find with some of today's Ferraris, Lamborghinis and Aston Martins. Even the supposedly more efficient power plants that you get in the latest McLarens and Audi R8s still put out CO2 figures that are in the 260 to 270 grams per kilometre bracket, and they can't crack 25 mpg on the combined cycle. It's possible to share Mercedes-AMG's quiet satisfaction then in readings that see the standard version of this GT Roadster delivering figures which really aren't very much different from those of the much humbler C63 saloon model that shares the same 4-litre V8 bi-turbo engine. This 476 bhp entry-level GT variant manages 30.1 mpg on the combined cycle and 219 grams per kilometre of CO2, which is only fractionally less than you get in the equivalent coupe version. That's a model that's a mere 55 kilos lighter. Even the much more powerful top GTC derivative manages 24.8 mpg and 259 grams per kilometre. Now, the only contender in this segment with comparable power that can get anywhere close to this Mercedes stats is Porsche's 911 Turbo Cabriolet, and that's a car that really isn't very far ahead despite its much smaller, lighter 3-litre 6-cylinder engine.
So how have those Affalterbach engineers done it? Well, there are certainly lots of little detailed touches that help. The active louvres in the front panel, for instance. When the car's working hard, these vents open to feed cool air to the radiators, but when you're driving normally, they close to aid aerodynamics and save fuel. Inevitably though, the biggest contributor to efficiency lies in the clever design of the M177 series power plant developed as part of Mercedes' Blue Direct engine family. The neat element here lies in the fact that the two turbos have been moved from their usual position on the outside of the cylinder banks and placed instead within the cylinder V. That means the Euro 6 engine can be smaller, slighter, more responsive and cleaner. More efficient electromechanical steering and an engine stop-start system also help.
Of course, as a driver, you'll have to do your part here. The quoted figures assume that the AMG SpeedShift DCT transmission is operating in its most relaxed, controlled efficiency mode, and that will give you softer gear changes and a more restrained engine note. At cruising speeds in this setting, a gliding function will also be activated that will temporarily decouple the engine from the drivetrain when you lift off the throttle. All of which is all very well, but let's get real here. I mean, in reality, if you're a typical owner, you won't be driving your AMG GT in a way that will deliver figures that are remotely close to the ones that Mercedes quotes. In our time with mixed motoring in this car, we found ourselves averaging about 20 mpg. That's a more typical figure that would probably give you a range of around about 300 miles from the 75-litre fuel tank. Now, if you go and take this car on a track, you could expect to see consumption fall to as low as 10 miles per gallon. In other words, however you slice it and dice it, a supercar is always going to be a pricey thing to run. Nor is it only a question of accepting the fact that you'll quickly be on first name terms with your local filling station's cashier. Your insurance premiums will also be frightening, courtesy of a top-of-the-shop Group 50 rating for all models. Still, that'll be the same whatever choice you make in this segment. And at least this Mercedes will hold on to its value relatively well. You can expect around 59% of your original purchase price back after the usual 3-year ownership period. Now that is better even than a Porsche 911 Cabriolet can achieve. The model is traditionally a segment leader in this respect, and that will make this GT a better bet if you're looking at leasing it. Now then, what about other financial considerations? Well, you'll need to book a service every 12,500 miles, which is more frequent than the Porsche 911's 20,000 mile stops. But this AMG comes with a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty and Mercedes' 30-year roadside assistance breakdown cover. And it's also worth knowing that your maintenance outlay can be kept a little in check by going for the optional service care package. This spreads the cost of regular garage visits, guaranteeing the price of parts and labour for up to 4 services and covering the cost of all recommended service items such as brake fluid, spark plugs, air filters, fuel filters and screen wash. There's also an assist dashboard service indicator that monitors engine use and tells you exactly when a dealership visit is due. And it's also worth mentioning that the optional Mercedes Me Connect Services package includes remote self-diagnostic capability, which enables your GT Roadster to monitor wear and tear items and to alert your local dealer to let you know if something needs attending to. An exclusive money, no object German performance sports car was once a thing of the 50s. Hollywood film stars drove them back then, but in the modern era, you'd have something low-slung and Italian, surely. Or would you? This Mercedes-AMG GT model has changed things in this sector, especially in this Roadster, guys. It's dynamic, it's desirable, and best of all, it's different. After all, look at what else there is on offer in this segment. Convertible versions of Porsche's 911 Turbo and Audi's R8 borrow much from humbler models. If you're able to afford more and you can stretch to, say, a McLaren 570S Spider, you'll find that car to be, in many ways, merely a very good copy of the comparable open-topped Ferrari 488. Were you to be fabulously wealthy, you'd need only to choose one or the other. But a Mercedes-AMG GT, particularly in roadster form, is a car many would want to own, whatever else already lay in residence in their air-conditioned, timber-framed garage. To want one, you have also got to want the raw and uncompromising driver focus that's part and parcel of this car's character. Now, you'll either like that or you won't. If you don't, your Mercedes salesperson will walk you gently over to the other side of the showroom where you can take a seat in the brand's more laid-back SL model. That's the Benz that's freed up this car to be the road racer it is. Now, the SL is a very nice machine, but it can't provide the memorable, white-knuckle, thrilling experience that it's possible to enjoy in a GT. Now, that kind of thing is harder to find in this sector than you might think. The segment is full of very fast, very capable contenders, but it is telling that after a week of hard-charging driving in this one, we were struggling to remember any of them. A GT gets your attention, both at the wheel and long after you've left it cooling on the driveway. That won't be for everyone. If you want a good all-rounder in this class, then this isn't it. The ride's over firm, it's difficult to maneuver in tight spaces, cruising refinement certainly isn't a strong point, and any perceived price advantage over obvious rivals disappears once you start to spec the car up in the way that most owners will want. Even so, we don't care. This is one of those rare things, a truly exciting machine, and the kind of model that enthusiasts will be talking about a century from now. Best of all, perhaps, ordinary people love it. In an age when pin-up performance cars often excite more jealousy than passion amongst passers-by, this one just makes them smile. You get the thumbs up as you power on, and when you arrive and park up, kids want to take pictures. The world seems a better place. This, you see, is something very special. A sports car with soul.